Hello and welcome. This is Lisa Jones, and you are listening to the Exploring Death podcast. Hello and welcome. I'm Lisa Jones. On today's episode of Exploring Death, I have the honor and privilege of interviewing Jim Owen. Jim enjoyed a profound near-death experience where he was taken to a beautiful river setting. Here he experienced white light, meeting his angel guide, having a life review, and was given instructions about his future life. He says common people can be called for uncommon tasks. Wanting to return to that river seeking answers, Jim took a 7,000-mile motorcycle trip in search of a river, the title of his forthcoming book. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you. Happy to be with you.
Yes. Well, I'm excited to hear about your 7,000-mile motorcycle trip, but I also want to hear what led to your near-death experience.
Well, quite an experience it was, to say the least. It happened on February the 8th, 2011. I, as an occupation, am an auctioneer, something you normally don't find many people on your block do that for a living. And I travel nationwide doing real estate auctions. I was preparing for one of the biggest auctions of my career, actually, 600 lots on a beautiful lake here in Texas. Had been having some signs of heart problems, nothing really major, but enough signs that it created concern. And I had an appointment with the cardiologist for like 2 weeks later, or no, it was a little more than that, but anyhow, later, because I was getting ready to go on a trip for about 2 weeks where I was preparing for this auction. My wife pushed me that day to go to the doctor. She worked for the cardiologist, so she had a little pull there to go in and say, I'm seeing some signs and I think we should get him in today. The cardiologist was our next door neighbor. Previously, I had sold him land where he'd built a home, so we were friends as well. And I did go in that day, and they put me on the treadmill doing a stress test, and that's where I had a heart attack. I was told that I had to get my heart rate up to a certain level, and I kept watching the meter to do so because I felt like it was getting more difficult. Felt like I was sinking in quicksand or something, that I just could hardly move. And when I saw that we got the heart rate up to the right level and held it there a moment, then everything just went black. And I came to lying on a table in that same room, surrounded by nurses and the doctor. And I'm hearing him say things like, we're losing him fast, blood pressure 60/40, get nitro under his tongue. When it dissolves, put another one. Put the IV in, squeeze the bag to get it in as quickly as possible, and then put another one in. And I'm calling the hospital to get the operating room ready. He said at that point, I grabbed his arm and said, I don't have time for this. I've got to travel tomorrow. And his response was something like, no, you don't. You know, we've got other plans for you. So they took me, the hospital, now let me explain, was in Sherman, Texas. His office was right across from the hospital, a 2-lane street. And I'm hearing things like, we're going to have to get an ambulance to keep him stable, to get him there. And I'm thinking to myself, this is all ridiculous. It's just across the street. I started fighting it. I was fighting very hard, trying to stop it myself, trying to stop this heart attack. And I suddenly realized, I'm dying. I'm going to die. So I prayed and I said, God, if it's my time to come, I have no choice in the matter. I'm ready. I'll accept this. He said at that point, I calmed down and they were able to work on me, get me stabilized to get across the street. And it was like you'd see in a movie where somebody's rushing through the hospital and every door you approach, somebody's there to have it open. It was all that way, all the way to the heart cath. They didn't have to do open heart, but they said during the heart cath, you won't feel anything. You'll see on a monitor us going through your arteries. There'll be no pain, and whatever blockage we find, we can open up. The very minute they said, we're beginning, I went out. And I started seeing not the bright white light that a lot of people talk about. I was seeing a more of a chocolatey color swirling. There were white lights reflecting off of it. My first thought was, I've died and I'm going to hell because it's dark. Suddenly I come to, and people are walking away from me. So I'm laying there thinking, am I supposed to be awake? Am I supposed to be out? I don't remember what they told me. I'll ask. I suddenly went out again, and I was right back into that tunnel. This time it was getting lighter. I was progressing through the tunnel, and I was seeing more and more light. Just as I was about to exit the tunnel, I came to again. And again, people were walking away from me. What I didn't realize at the time was they were using the defibrillators to shock me back. I realized it 2 days later when I finally had a chance to look at myself, and it looked like they had taken a hot iron and just touched me all over. I had burn marks all over me. So the third time that I go out, I find myself standing on a cliff, and I'm looking down at a most beautiful river, the clearest water you could ever imagine. It was a very mountain scene. I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains in West Virginia. So it was a scene from back home. And I'm standing on this cliff just admiring. It was the fall of the year, so all the trees were in their beautiful autumn glory. But colors were so vivid and so bright. The oranges were just so vivid orange, and the reds and the yellows, unlike anything I've ever witnessed. So I'm just taking this scene in. To the left of me is the river bottom. There's a road that comes down off of a mountain into that bottom, and it crosses the river across a steel arched bridge with the wooden plank flooring. And it goes to the other side, and the road goes two directions, one off in the distance up a mountain, and another that comes along the river bottom. And at the foot of that mountain, along that road, is a stone wall, very reminiscent of what I would see back home. I realized later, I was told and realized that I was taken to that spot because I would feel comfortable, I would feel at ease, I would feel spiritual, and I would be able to meet with my angel guide in comfort. I've always said for many years, I've been gone from West Virginia for over 30 years. I go back quite regular because my mother's still there. But I've often said you can take the body out of the mountain, but you can never take the mountains out of the soul. And I feel my soul vibrates perfectly with the earth when I'm back there, when I'm in those mountains. So because of all that, I felt comfortable. I knew I was out of body, but I didn't give that a lot of thought. It was just something I accepted. And as I stood there, I was told, fall forward and glide to me. But I couldn't see anyone. Again, I come back. This time there's nobody walking away from me. So I'm thinking, they've given up. They're not paying me any attention. And then I suddenly go out again. What I didn't know at that point was they were having to use the defibrillator so much, they had put some on me that just suctioned on, so they could just hit a button from a distance and shock me back. So the fourth time I go, I'm standing on this cliff again, and I hear a truck coming. An old flatbed truck comes off the mountain, crosses that bridge, and I could hear the timbers. I could hear the boom, 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 boom of the timbers as the truck crossed. And I'm following it with my eyes. It was an old, like 50s model truck. I could hear the gears clanking as they changed. And it goes on up the mountain, but I'm following it with my eyes, and I'm suddenly drawn to a bright white light on this stone wall. And I focus on that, and I'm told again, fall forward, glide to me. It's okay. You won't get hurt. So I did. And suddenly I feel like I'm like a bird. I'm just flying along, and I'm looking into the river. I'm seeing fish. I'm seeing the beautiful river rocks, so smooth and round. But everything is so defined. It's so bright. It's so clear. And as I keep drifting towards this bright white light, one of the odd things is I see thorn bushes, and I think, I'm going through those, and it's going to hurt. It didn't. I went through them. It didn't hurt. I don't know if that was a sign. I don't know what that meant, other than I know thorns do hurt, and they didn't hurt me. There on the stone wall, this bright white light was a personage. It was a man with very long white hair, a long white beard, dressed all in white. And it was almost like a 3D, like a hologram. But he said, he called me by name, and he said, come sit by me. And I did. I went over, of course, and sat. And he introduced himself as my angel guide. He went through a life review, but not like, you hear some people say, oh, my whole life flashed before my eyes. That didn't happen to me. I was kind of disappointed it didn't, but that didn't happen. I was just, he didn't have a big book or anything he was reading out of. He just knew. It's like he'd been there all the way through my life. And he pointed out good things that I had done, and he pointed out bad things that I had done. And it was not judgmental. It was stern, but not judgmental. It was given with love. And I think merely told or pointed out to tell me that I had not done some of the tasks that I had been challenged to do. So at this point, he then went through, here's what you're to do. Here is your calling. Here's what you're to do when you go back in the body. And it was all laid out quite pointedly. Then I was just kind of suddenly back in body. I didn't see myself lying in that room. It was just all my focus was along that river and with my angel guide, who was named Enoch, by the way, and that was not revealed. If it was revealed at that point, it was sealed. But later he appeared to me and said, I am your angel guide. My name is Enoch. And of course, I've done a lot of study on Enoch, know that he is a teacher and someone who was kind of the right hand of God for a long time. When I came to, I was very confused. I was taken to the recovery room, and I'm thinking, boy, did I ever have a strange dream. And to speak of dreams, to back up just a little bit, when I was a kid, starting at a very young age, maybe 7, 8, 9 years old, and I had this dream repeatedly. It was a dream of that I had died, and that it was pointed out to me that I had not accomplished the task that I was supposed to do. Now, when I was very young and having those dreams, they were kind of scary. I remember thinking to myself, why am I having this kind of dream? Why am I being pointed out that I'm not, that I go through life and not do what I'm supposed to do? When I was in that room when I had the heart attack, that was one of the first things I thought of was that childhood dream. And I had it up into my teens, but I'm thinking, I've got so much yet to do. And here I am, I'm facing death and I haven't done the things I was supposed to do. And then I thought of crazy things like, I need to call so-and-so. I need to let this person know I'm dead. I need to call my coworkers that I'm supposed to meet tomorrow. The silliness that was going on in my head when I'm laying there dying. But as I'm laying in the recovery room trying to figure it out, the doctor walked in and he said, well, good news is you're alive. Bad news is you died 4 times. And the last time you died, I didn't think you were coming back. He said, in fact, my entire staff was looking at me like, why are you still working on this guy? He's gone. But he said, while I was working on you, he said, it was as if someone walked up to me and said into my ear, don't stop working. He's coming back.
Wow.
So he said, I just attempted doing what I could do. And he said, I did not save you. God sent you back. After that, he and I had some very good conversations about it. He's a Christian and wanted to know more. He wanted me to come in and talk with him, which I did. And we had some good conversations about it. Most people would think, and most people have asked me and said to me, after that experience, you must wake up every morning and the first thing you do is thank God for being alive. And they're a little bit surprised when I tell them, no, I don't do that every morning. Some mornings I do. Some mornings I wake up and say, why did you send me back? I loved that river. That was beautiful. Why didn't I get to stay? I felt no stress. I felt no pressure. I felt nothing but love. I felt so at ease. Why was I not allowed to stay? So there is conflict. There is questions that come up. So I spent the first 5 or 6 years after that with my head just full of questions, trying to sort out. The big question was, why me? I'm just a common guy. I'm an auctioneer. I travel around the country and auction stuff off. What do I have? What's important that I can do? I don't understand that. Everything that I was told on that river was sealed, and I couldn't remember it. Other than the fact I was there, I had the conversation, but the actual specifics were sealed. I guess I was in my 5th year after this that I went to a book signing and a presentation that Dr. Eben Alexander was giving at a big church in Plano, Texas. Big crowd, huge crowd showed up. So when the question and answer time came, I had my hand up the whole time trying to ask a question. And finally he called on me. He says, I've only got about 2 minutes for another question. So my first question to him was, why, when somebody goes through an experience like this, can they not talk about it? And of course, his immediate answer was, because people are going to think you're crazy. And you're hesitant to talk about it. You're hesitant to bring this up, which is exactly true. That's the way I felt. If I tell too many people about this or go into too much detail about it, I'm going to lose some friends. They're going to think, I didn't come back altogether. So he asked me a question, and that 2 minutes that he had allocated for a question turned into 30 minutes of just he and I going back and forth with questions and answers. And one of the things that he said that really stuck to me was, if everything you were told was revealed to you at one time, your brain couldn't handle it. You just could not handle all that information at one time. So as the time is right, and as the time is necessary, and that you are ready for it, things will be revealed. So I was later in a visit with Enoch, was told not to discount anybody that comes in my path. It could be what we would call a bum on the street. If somebody approached me and seemed like they had a message, something they wanted to say, to listen, to take the time and listen. And I've had so many experiences with that very thing that it's actually been, it amazes me to this day that the things that have happened, from a simple thing of like walking out of Sam's Club one day, and I was on my motorcycle, and I was parked right out front, and I walk over, there's nobody around. I look to see if there's any cars, nothing's coming. I walk over to my motorcycle, and as soon as I put something in the saddlebag, I realize there's a man standing there. Where he came from, I don't know, maybe he'd been in the store. But we started talking about the motorcycle, and he said he was a preacher, had an online show, and he was also an author. Well, as we chatted back and forth, I was going through a life challenge at that time that for some reason I opened up and talked to him about. He had been through that same exact challenge. So we got together a couple of days later and had lunch, and his advice was just so spot on. It helped me get through that challenge wonderfully. Tried to stay in touch with the guy. He's just gone. He was on Facebook for a while and then just gone. I have no idea what happened to him or where he went to. But that was just like the start of my realization that messages do come in diverse ways, and to always be prepared and ready for that. I like to say, after a near-death experience, we have to expect the unexpected. The things that we would never think would happen will happen. The dream that you have that somebody's going to call you, and you even dream of the message they're going to give you. And 2 weeks later, it happens. You're just not surprised when those things happen anymore. You just know it's going to happen. The intuition is at an all-time high after, or what has been for me after my near-death experience. But the questions, I felt like this river actually existed, that it was a material place. It was there. So I have a friend back in West Virginia who's a nature photographer. I told him about it. So he started pointing out, he would post pictures on Facebook and tag me that he would think we're close to what I described to him. And many of these scenes they were very close. I spent hours on Google Maps researching rivers all through the mountains, trying to find that exact spot. So then I decided, you know what, I just have to go look for it. If it's there, I'll be led to it. So I got on my motorcycle. This was 2 years ago, maybe 3 now. But I get on the motorcycle and I take off to West Virginia, which is 1,075 miles from my house to my mom's house up there. I had 2 real estate auctions to do en route. So first one was in Virginia off the Blue Ridge Parkway, mountainous area. So it gave me a chance to ride around there looking at rivers. But I spent time in my home area, just riding around, looking, trying to find that spot, that river. Saw a lot of beautiful river scenes, but not the exact spot. I traveled into Southwest Virginia, looking in that area as well. We had another auction a week later, so I had a week to meander my way from southern West Virginia down to Tampa, Florida. And in that trip, I went through Tennessee. I went through many places, very mountainous areas, back roads, not interstate, but hitting the back roads. I quickly realized the river was not to be found. The river, fortunately, exists in my mind. I can go to that river anytime I want in meditation, and I can converse with my angel guide at that point. But I felt, if I found that spot, he would come visit and he'd say, okay, I told you once, I want to tell you again. So you'll have everything, all the knowledge. But along that route, I spent a lot of time on mountaintops, just pulling over to the side of the road and meditating. And answers started coming. Things started coming to me. Revelations coming. And I can't at this point say, here's my specific job. This is exactly what I was told I'm to do. But I'm getting more clarity on it. And I feel that it's a matter of spreading love, and it's a matter of helping in times of chaos, which we're certainly in now. But it's yet to be unfolded in its entirety. I'm led there a little bit at a time. One of the things that I came away from it with is I have absolutely no fear of death. None at all. It's just going to a different dimension. It's going to a different job. It's going to a place of peace and tranquility where we can receive more instruction so that we can go about our next challenge of what we're told to do. Another thing I came away from it with is that things that I used to like to do, I don't anymore. I don't find joy in the same things. I don't find joy in materialistic things whatsoever. We have greatly downsized, sold a home in the country on acreage, and currently living in an apartment to go to the next step. But we like the downsizing and the simplicity that we've gotten into our life at this point. And I think that's very important. I think that it's humbled somewhat, and to a point of being able to do good and have clarity of mind to move forward. I also have a lot more empathy for people. In fact, I have developed some empath powers that have scared me at times, and I've had to learn to deal with it. I'll back up a little bit on that. One of the things that too has been the open mind, that I've been a far more receptive to learning and paying attention to things that previously I wouldn't have. And I find that very refreshing. I've stepped more into the spiritual world and learning more. I don't want to slam religion at all because there's a purpose, but I don't feel that the distinction of religions is as important as people make it to be. I think that just being spiritual, I mean, I have had times where I felt much closer to God sitting on a mountaintop than in a brick mortar building. It has worked that way for me, and I'm happy that it has. But I took up yoga, I took up meditation, and I think really throughout most of my life I'd been meditating and not really realizing that I was doing meditation or doing it the right way, as a meditating teacher would say. But I've embraced it now, and it's a part of my life. And I like to say that in prayer we go to God or our higher being, asking for answers, seeking advice, and in meditation we receive the answers. When we can quiet our mind and get still, then the answers will come to us that we need at that time. Another thing I got involved in that I didn't even know what it meant is Reiki. I had never heard of it. I was reading a book that was written by a fellow West Virginian, and in it she was talking about getting energy healing. And I contacted her after that and said, what in the heck are you talking about? What is this energy healing? So she told me, gave me an introduction to Reiki. I started searching online for a Reiki practitioner in my area. Couldn't find anybody in the immediate town where I live. I live 70 miles north of Dallas in a town called Sherman. But I kept getting led to this one practitioner who was 50 miles south of me in Allen, Texas. And no matter what I searched for on the internet, she was popping up. Now, the interesting thing is she's never paid for a Google ad in her entire career. She never bought an ad, but she just kept popping up. So I pretty soon realized that was a sign, called her, made an appointment. And in the very first session, I went through an awakening, through a Kundalini that just hit hard. I saw a previous life in great detail that I came away from that with no doubt whatsoever that it was real. I found the session so comforting and so relaxing that it allowed my mind to open. And every session thereafter has been the same way. I got so involved in it, I'm now a Reiki master. I went through the 3 levels and got my certification. I believe in it so much. But I would have never, in my previous life, never even thought of anything like that. Now I embrace it, and it's part of my life. I'd been in real estate my entire career. General real estate as a realtor and the auction part of it. And it didn't interest me. The auction part interests me because I get to travel and it's exciting and I do fun things. But the mundane part of the normal real estate business, I just lost. I felt like that I could be directing my time so much better in another way. And I feel that I am. It's taken time to get there. And it's a totally constantly evolving process that I welcome because I never know what each day is going to bring. But opportunities arise and things happen. Now, I guess it was last summer, went down to Austin, Texas to a workshop from the Association of Research and Enlightenment, Edgar Casey's group. And it was a session about past life regression. And since I had had this experience in seeing a previous life, I wanted to go and hear. Great presentation, wonderful workshop. Early on in it, I got to talk a little bit about my near-death experience. And I made the comment that for the first 6 to 7 years, things came very slowly, or for the first 6 years. But in the 7th year, it seemed like things were coming to me very fast, very rapid, that almost daily, sometimes more than once a day, things were coming more clear to me. At the first break we had, I stood up, put my book down in the pew and turned to go to the restroom. And there was a little lady standing in front of me. And she said, "I'm here to deliver you a message." And she looked up like she was looking to the ceiling, and almost like she was interpreting because she spoke in broken English. She said, "You were chosen for a very important job. By the end of 2019, spirituality is going to be at an all-time high on earth, and you're going to play a role in this. Chaos will be at an all-time high, and you're to play a role in settling that." And then she said the strangest thing. She said, for her, it seemed out of character, she said, "And if you think things have been coming to you fast, you're about to have a dump truck load of information back up to you and dump on you at one time. Be prepared, be ready, it's going to happen." And she looked back up towards the ceiling for a moment, and she turned back and said, "And that's the end of the message." She walked away quickly to not be seen again. I went on to the restroom and I'm thinking, what just happened? Who was this lady? So I come back and I asked a lady who'd been sitting behind me, I said, that I'd been chatting with, I said, "Did you see a lady come up and say something to me?" She said, "I did. I heard everything she said, and I'm just been in awe." And I said, "Can you help me find her?" We both looked. There was about 40 people there. We both looked. Lady's nowhere to be found. Nowhere. I go out front. I'm thinking, well, maybe she's from the organizers. I was talking to them earlier. And I asked them, they were all together having a little meeting, and I see this lady's not there. So I asked the lady, one of the ladies, "Did you send somebody back to give me a message?" "No, we didn't." So at the end of the session, the lady behind me said, "I'll stand at this one door, you stand at the other, we'll look at everybody that leaves." We got together. No, she was not there, not to be found anywhere. So from that, I have certainly reinforced that not to ever discount anybody that comes in my path, because sometimes maybe they're specifically sent there from somewhere else. And I feel that was the case that particular day for sure. But it just seems to be always evolving, things coming clearer and clearer. That motorcycle ride, I will point out a little kind of a funny thing about it. There's an organization in the motorcycle world called the Iron Butt Association. And one of the qualifying rides is you have to ride 24 hours or 1,000 miles within 24 hours. You have to document all your stops, how long you stop. Someone has to verify your odometer when you leave and verify when you end your journey. I told absolutely nobody I was doing this except a clerk at a convenience store that I knew, and I got him to verify and sign off on my odometer. So I take off riding. My wife knows that Jackson, Tennessee is halfway between my home and my mother's. So at Jacksonville, Tennessee, I pulled into a motel parking lot, and I sent a text and said, "I'm in Jackson. I've just pulled into a motel." I didn't lie. And the response was, "Good, glad you stopped." I continue riding. And rode all night through the mountains of Tennessee and part of North Carolina. And the next morning I end up in Cherokee, North Carolina. I've traveled 1,070 miles, and I get someone to verify my odometer there. So while I was looking for that river, I also definitely earned the iron butt. not only that 1,000 miles, but the other 6,000 miles as well. It was quite a journey, but like I say, it was a mind-opening journey, because it gave me time to do a lot of thinking, do a lot of meditating, and searching for the answers that some came then, some are still coming now.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's been an amazing journey. To this day, I still hold the record at that cardiologist office of being the only patient to ever have their heart attack and die in their office, and particularly to come back to life later. But they have a lot of patients, but nobody else has gone through what I did with them.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. You mentioned empath powers that have come to you. Is there a story around the empath powers?
Yes. Thanks for asking, because I meant to go into that earlier.
Right.
Yes. One day after I'd gotten into the Reiki practice, and the lady who is my mentor has been doing Reiki for 20 years. And she said she's only had like 3 people that she's worked with that she draws energy from. And I'm one of those 3. So one day I'm in a Subway restaurant, and I'm sitting there eating my sandwich, and I start looking at people, and it's suddenly like I can feel their problems. I can feel the challenges that they're going through, almost as if it was an open book and I'm reading about them. So I would try to send comforting energy to them. And then the next thing I know, the next person, the next person. And then I'm looking at a older lady, and I'm thinking, she's raising her grandkids. She's a widow and she's raising grandkids. She's having a hard time. And I sent her comforting energy, loving energy, as much as I could. Not a word was said between us. As she got up to leave, she walked by me and stopped at my table, looked at me and said, "Thank you," and just kept going. When I got ready to leave, I realized I was totally drained. I was exhausted. I was only about 3 miles from home, but I'm wondering, can I walk out to the car and drive home? I'm so tired. It just mentally drained me. So as soon as I got home, I called my Reiki practitioner, Billy, is her name, and I said, "Billy, I've got to tell you what happened." And when I did, she said, "I knew this was going to happen. I didn't know when, I just knew it was going to happen." And she gave great advice. She said, when these things happen, you've got to send them the comforting, loving energy, and then you have to release it. She said, what you did was you held on to everybody's problems that you read that day. You kept them within you, within your mind and in your heart, and it exhausted you. So she said, you have to send them the energy and then release it and not hold it within. Some of the best advice I could have gotten about that. So it's, since then, I've had that happen many times, but it's not been the same draining experience as it was then.
Wow. Yeah, that's really great advice, because I think that's one of the issues with so many people that are empaths or healers is that they care so deeply that ultimately they end up getting drained or sick or, whatever, because they're not just allowing themselves to be the conduit to allow the energy to go through them.
Correct.
But they send their own, prana or their own energy to the person as well. So good advice.
It's the same thing in doing Reiki on someone, because
right.
You can, when Billy would work on me and she would talk about getting images, she would see things in my life. One of the interesting things that she always sees is a snow white horse with a red healer's hand on the hindquarters. Every single time she does a session on me, somewhere in that session, she'll see that. I had done a few sessions on people and I wasn't seeing things. People were saying they got great relief from pain or great help, but I wasn't seeing anything. Well, one day I was doing a session on a fellow student, and suddenly I felt like I was seeing myself as a worker behind what out here we call a shotgun house, the little farmhouses that are all alike. And a little girl would come out the back door and watch me work. She had a dog with her, wore a little flower print dress, and she would walk over to me and say, "Can you help me?" And then go back. And that happened about 3 times. Very flat land. I got the feeling I was like in Kansas, very flat land. So when the session was over, I said that to the lady that I was working on. Her mouth flew open. She turned to Billy, our Reiki mentor, and Billy looked at her and said, "I didn't tell him anything. I have not said a word." Turns out she sees the exact same thing. And it turns out this lady grew up on a farm in Kansas in a house exactly like we were seeing. She was abused and she was asking for help. And she said her mother made her little flower print dresses. That's all she ever wore.
Wow.
So everything I saw was exactly from her childhood.
Interesting. And what Billy was seeing, which is great confirmation when you.
Right. Yeah.
That's
exactly.
Wow.
I think one of the biggest hurdle that I've had with my near-death experience has just constantly been the why me, and trying to figure that out. And the answer has come to me many times is that that God does choose common people for uncommon tasks. I've had that come into my mind so many times. And I think that my full task is yet to be revealed. I felt like at first, I know it's a service, that I have to do a service or will do a service. But at first I felt like it was dealing with the homeless. And I got very interested in that and still am, but I quickly saw that it could become all consuming. I would go to Tampa, Florida, and I had a friend there that works with the homeless. A guy I'd met actually on the internet, on Facebook. And I called him and said, "I want to go out with you some," and did. We spent a lot of late night hours around Tampa, providing some aid to homeless people. I quickly saw how it was wearing on him and that he felt like he just wasn't accomplishing things. And shortly thereafter, I kind of got the answer, while what you're doing is good, this is not the intended purpose. There's other things you need to be doing. So I kind of pulled my attention away from that, still have empathy for the homeless, of course, and still do things, but I didn't let it become totally encompassing of all my time and energy, because I feel it is needed elsewhere. Now, I haven't been able to really talk about my near-death experience until the past few months. My first presentation was a Friends of IANS, International Near-Death Studies Association in Louisville, Texas. It's the Dallas chapter. A professor named Jan Holden, Dr. Jan Holden, heads that up, and she had found my Facebook page and invited me to come be a speaker. And that was my first time to really give the presentation. Billy came to that presentation, and when I was done, she said to the people, "I want you to know that even 6 months ago, he could not have done this. He's been evolving to the point where he can now relay what he went through and help other people understand about death and to feel more comfortable about their own experience and what they'll be facing." But she said 6 months ago, he couldn't have done it. He would have been too emotional about it. And I've been telling him that he has a story to help people, that he has a message to convey. And I'm very proud of the fact that he did it tonight. So I kind of felt like I really evolved, taking a giant step at that point to be able to do that. So that's why I'm very happy to be able to do this podcast with you. If it helps one person, if anything I've had to say helps them not fear death, then we've accomplished something.
Absolutely.
And if it's one person at a time, so be it.
That's
But
right.
I feel happy and comfortable now about sharing the message of what I've gone through.
Well, I'm honored that you have chosen to come on the podcast and share the message. I think it's such a powerful one. And I'd like to pull a few cards for you to see what Spirit has to say. Okay. Let's see. All right. So the first card is Delight. And the first card I pull is always the Blockage card. And so I think it's just confirmation of what you were saying about, it's really been recently that you're able to share this and be delighted about it. It's been up until this point just something that was too emotional, too locked into your psyche to be able to express and to share with others. And it wasn't something that delighted you. It was something that, almost terrified you to have to relive it and think about it and talk about it. So, oh my God, I'm getting such chills when I say this. Your action card is grace, which you've been given the grace from God, the universe, whatever anybody wants to call it, but you've been given the grace to be able to step fully into your soul being, your true essence of who you are. And I'm just being flooded just with this overwhelming feeling of just pure love and light. And that's what you're here to do on earth, is to be that being of love and light, to help, as they said, with the chaos and also with the spirituality that's coming. And then your outcome card is beginnings, that this truly is a new beginning for you. And, not only did you get a chance to come back to this life and to experience it anew, is what they're saying, but that you're going to be giving other people beginnings, that you're here to open that door for them. And they don't have to go through a near-death experience to receive the grace that you're here to provide them. So it's almost like what's coming through is they're laughing because it's almost like you're here to be a minister of love, but it's not in an organized religion of fashion per se, because they're laughing because, like you had said earlier about organized religion, there's a place for it, but spirituality is really the key to it. And
absolutely.
So for you, being a minister of love, is your congregation is, they're saying, worldwide, really, and that you're going to have this format where by you speaking and sharing and feeling that empathy for others and just allowing the love to pour out from your heart is going to be the healing salve for so many, for so many. So, wow. And it's like, I feel so much emotion sharing that with you. I hope you feel that.
Oh, I do. Thank
potency.
you.
Yes.
I do. Yes. Amazing.
Yeah. Wow. And even, I just wanted to mention too, even just us running across each other, I think I must have seen you post on the Facebook page, Near Death Experiences. Maybe
yes.
it was, maybe because you had done recently an interview with Trisha, and I think that's where, because
right.
I'm friends with Trisha and had interviewed her. So, and I just had this immediate knowing, it's like, I've got to get Jim on the podcast. And so here you are. And it was a magical connection. And I know, as we just mentioned, that just people listening to this, it's going to help them heal in so many ways.
You mentioned early on, you asked whether to call me Jim or JJ, and I want to explain that. In the biker world, we have road names. Now, when I say I'm a biker, that doesn't mean I'm one of these outlaw bikers. I ride with a group called Bikers Against Child Abuse. And our function is to empower children who have been abused to help them get through the ordeal of testifying in court and so forth. We're guardians with those children. We will escort them to court if necessary. We sit in the courtroom. We adopt them into our family. So that's the kind of biker I am. It's just that we ride motorcycles to fulfill that task. And nothing makes a child feel more secure than to have 20, 30, 40, 50, even sometimes 100 bikers show up to say, we're here to protect you and take care of you. But we go by road names instead of our real name. Based upon my experience with the number of times that I was shocked back to life, my road name became Jumpstart Jimmy. and I had a logo here. It's gone somewhere now. I don't see it. I was going to show you, but one of our riders is a very good artist, and he drew up a very neat professional logo for me that shows two hands with the gloves on, holding defibrillators, the outline of a heart, and 4 stars in it, and it shows the flat line and then the heartbeat going, and it has the date 2/8/11 and Jumpstart Jimmy over it. So sometimes I just go by JJ for short on that. But people say, well, do you have to jumpstart cars a lot? And I said, no, I was jump-started back to life 4 times.
Wow, I love it. What a great story.
That's how that came about.
That's right. Wonderful. Well, I will have the links so people can connect with you, but is there a website or something you'd like to mention for people listening?
Yeah, I have a Facebook page set up for my forthcoming book, In Search of a River. And that is, of course, facebook.com/Jim Owen NDE. Just Jim Owen NDE after facebook.com/. And that's the easiest one for them to go to and look at. My Reiki website is jjenergy.net. So they could look at that as well. But the facebook.com/Jim Owen NDE gives more detail about the book and more information about my near-death experience.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Jim, so much. What a pleasure and honor to have spoken to you today.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
All right. And thank you to all my listeners for listening in today. Thank you for listening to the Exploring Death podcast. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Before you make any financial or legal decisions, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Exploring Death. Written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.